The Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Jeff Brantley.
Welcome in, everybody, to episode 82 of the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. As always, here your host, Jeff Brantley. Glad to be back with you today on a Thursday edition of the show, and especially glad to be back with you today as it's been a while, of course. It's been about a month or so since I last recorded a podcast for everybody out there. Going to get back on that horse moving forward permanently once again, and there's a good reason for me being away, actually, and I'll get to some of those details in a second here, but just wanted to start off the show that way, saying it's great to be back. A ton to talk about in the mixed martial arts world, a ton of huge fights coming up, too, to preview, so a lot coming up here on the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. Really excited to get to that, and I'll get to all of that on today's show, episode 82, and more in just 1 second here. First, let's run through the details of the show, and then I'll get into some of the new things. Some of them you can probably already tell. I'm on video. That's different for everybody out there who's been a diehard religious listener of this podcast. But I'll get to more of those in a second again here. But first, you can follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Brantley. Same thing on Instagram, guys, of course, at Jeff_Brantley. Check out the YouTube channel. That's where all these videos are going to be stored. That's the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast as well on YouTube. I'll have a link to that up on the website. My website, maninthecagemmma.show, is the official website. If you go there, you can get that YouTube channel. You can get all the latest episodes as well, the audio versions of them, which, by the way, you can still get over on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, guys. You can still go get those over on those platforms. But all of that will be linked up on the website, as well as all of the merchandise. You want a t-shirt, socks, sweatshirts, all that good stuff. Well, maybe not sweatshirts. It's starting to get a little warmer now throughout the United States. Some parts still a little cold, but maybe for next year, if you wanted a sweatshirt, you can go grab that over on maninthecagemmma.show, but also some blog content up there. I'm going to start getting more blog content out to everybody moving forward here, as well as a pledge to become a supporter of the show tab up on that page as well, maninthecagemmma.show. There's a little tab in the right-hand corner of the screen. You click that, you can pledge to become a supporter of the show. I love all my supporters already, little as $1 a month, all the way up to $10 a month. I would greatly appreciate it, and I thank you to all my listeners out there and supporters. All right, so that's most of the details surrounding the show there. Of course, you already knew a lot of those, but let's get to the new stuff that's going to be special about this podcast. And again, I'm on video now, so I will still be recording the audio version. I'll still be putting that out there, again, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff, for all the people that want to listen to the only audio version. I understand. I'm like you. At one point in my life, I was driving to a radio station every day, working, the 9 to 5, that type of thing. So I listen to a lot of stuff in my car, right? So I understand a lot of you with your kids, maybe you just want to listen to the audio version of things. So the audio version of the podcast still is what you want to listen to. That's fine. It's still going to be there. But for those that want to listen or not listen and watch me do my podcast live eventually here, which I'll get to that in a second too, you can now watch that video weekly right here on YouTube. Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. That way you get the latest videos whenever they drop. I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited to bring video to you guys weekly. And eventually this will be live, as I just briefly mentioned there. Right now, I'm going to record them, and do some of those things. But eventually here, I'm going to do some live shows. And that's going to include, sometimes I'm also going to do some shows maybe even during cards. I'm not going to try to rip off, the Joe Rogan podcast too much here. I'm not going to do too many, live podcasts. I'm not going to do that type of thing. But, there might be a few what I'll call viewing parties here and there we'll do where we can jump on together, maybe talk about the fights as they're happening, comment on them, that type of stuff. But even if we're not doing it during the cards, if this is a Thursday and I was doing it live right now for everybody, you out there, you could comment along live with me, right? I could bring you on the show, that type of thing, which I'm very excited about. So that's difference number one about the podcast moving forward. We're going to be on video, eventually live. Really excited about that. The second thing, though, is I'm going to format the show a little bit differently. Preview shows included. Now, preview show you'll hear tomorrow. I'm going to come back with 2 episodes back-to-back. I'll come with an episode tomorrow, previewing the next Bellator card, previewing the next UFC card. So that preview show tomorrow, you'll be able to hear the differences there, in which I will spend about 15 minutes. I'm going to try to limit it to 15 minutes or less, per fight I'm previewing. And that's just for time purposes. And, some of the shows I've done previewing, I've loved to do them. They've been a lot of fun. But when I do my personal preview of each fight, I'm going to try to keep it less for you, try to move the podcast along. Guest-wise, I'll get to that in a second. Maybe expect the same thing from my guests. But when I'm just previewing it myself, when I have a guy like Luke Lampy on or somebody else, it's going to be a little bit different, of course. It'll maybe be a little bit longer, but when I'm just doing my own personal preview, it'll be about 15 minutes or less. So not necessarily a ton of difference with the preview show, but more what I'm going to change is the shows like this. Today is going to be sort of a recap show, right? We had one championship last night, one on TNT 1, which was an interesting card. We're going to recap that as well as some other things going on in the mixed martial arts world. Jon Jones, all that's surrounding him that continues to surround the mixed martial arts world. Also, the heavyweight division. What is next for Francis Ngannou? Will it be Jon Jones? If it's not, who else will it be? Some things like that. I will get to all of that on today's show. It'll be mostly a bit of a recap show. Well, on these recap shows, I'm going to format my topics differently. I'm going to do what, maybe I'll come up with a fancier name for this. Maybe I should have had a better name for this by now on the podcast. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 5-minute topics. So, right, in mixed martial arts, that's the sport we love. Boxing, too, for you boxing fans out there. I will talk boxing on this show still, but primarily an MMA show, of course, still. We're going to do 5-minute topics, just like a championship fight. 5-minute rounds, 25 minutes. That's what we're going to spend on each topic. That'll also allow me to speed up some of these recap shows for you. We'll get to everything. We'll talk about it. We'll get in. We'll get out. I know you're busy. Listen, I'm not ripping any podcasts out there. I've done some longer podcasts. I'll still do some longer podcasts, but I know you're busy out there, and I know there's some other ones that are way long that may take up some of your time too, because I know you're listening to multiple podcasts. We're going to try to speed it up a little bit. I'm going to get to the meat and potatoes within each topic within 5 minutes for you. So coming up in just a couple minutes after I'm done giving you the spiel here, when you hear a topic, when I talk about Jon Jones, that's going to be topic number 1 here. And how the UFC botched this situation, and how Jon Jones is also leading to the botching of this situation. You're going to hear me give the meat and potatoes of that within 5 minutes, and then I'm going to move to the next one. So that's a formatting change for me. I'm going to go 5 minutes. After that, each recap show, if I have something else, if there is a fight card, a Dana White's Contender Series on a Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever they're going to move it to this year, maybe I'll throw that in at the end, of course. And again, that'll be a little bit different. I'll also go out with some parting shots. That's going to end the show each time. Parting shots, not timed, but they'll be quick. Not timed, but they'll be quick. They'll be quick little parting shots I'm going to give you at the end of every show. So that's the exciting things. I'm really excited to be back. I know I've been away for a little bit. I mean, did I miss anything? Did I miss anything talking about anything in the mixed martial arts world? As many of you out there know, of course I did. There was a lot going on in the mixed martial arts world. Me personally, I still was watching, of course. I wasn't as active on Twitter as I was getting ready to relaunch things, ready to really rebrand the show, really redo some things. I was still watching, though. I just wasn't here talking about them, and I'm excited to come back. And with the current landscape of mixed martial arts and with the current landscape of the world, now that we're returning to a lot of things, I'm really excited about that. So a lot to go, a lot to look forward to and go over right here on the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. All right, let's get to it. As I said, 5-minute topics, and I'm going to throw in an extra one today. And the only reason I'm going to do that is it's sort of a movie review for a big-time fight that was really promoted. There was a big-time movie fight that was promoted recently, and a lot of you maybe know what I'm talking about, maybe you don't. I'm going to throw a 6th one in today. It won't be 5 minutes, but I'll go over it real quick, maybe at the end of my 5 topics here, as I have a movie, call it my own, maybe my first and only movie reviews here on the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast that also has to deal with a big-time fight that was promoted throughout America. I'll get to that at the end of everything here. But first, let's jump off topic number 1. As I said, Jon Jones, everything going on around him and his move to the heavyweight division. Oh, and one more. I promise, once I get rolling on the show weekly here, I'm not going to keep stopping it like this, I promise. But one last little thing here, by the way. When I'm going to set the tape of each topic, though. That's not going to be a part of the 5 minutes. But otherwise, listen, I want some time to break things down, even though it's going to be 5 minutes per topic. But that part of me setting the tape will not be part of the 5 minutes. So let me get the watch started here again, the clock. And then once we get going, I promise it'll be smooth here. But basically, yes, I'm going to set the tape and I'm going to go here. But Jon Jones, move to the heavyweight division, seems to be on hold right now, of course. He was supposed to fight Francis Ngannou. That's not happening right now. He wants more money, he says. Dana White, after the Francis Ngannou win over Stipe Miocic in the press conference, he's saying he thinks Jon Jones should want to move back down to light heavyweight after seeing what happened to Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou. So a lot going on here. Jon Jones saying the UFC's not paying him enough money. That's why he doesn't want, that's why he's not going to sign the contract yet to fight Francis Ngannou. Then you have the other side of this, the UFC's basically scoffing at it a little bit, saying, hey, we don't necessarily want to give you all the money you're asking for, the type of money you're asking for. We don't think you're worth it, that type of thing. So an interesting situation here. So we'll go ahead and start the clock. And my thoughts on this is, and I've already given this to you. You already know. A lot of you have. And my guy, Jason Hagholm out there, right? We've had him on the podcast here. Love Jason. Go follow him on Twitter, jhagholm1. I tweeted at Jason Hagholm. This was months ago, right? This was like December or November. I tweeted at him. And you can go check that tweet out. And I've given my thoughts on this show as well. When I saw, and I think this is where it all leads, this is where it all boils down to me, this whole Jon Jones situation, is the UFC handled this so wrong. They botched this situation so bad. And because of matchmaking, honestly. When they made the Francis Ngannou-Stipe Miocic fight, the minute they made that fight, I thought to myself, Jon Jones may never fight at heavyweight. Once they made that matchup, I was like, he may never fight at heavyweight. The reason being is Francis Ngannou. If Francis Ngannou wins, I knew Jon Jones maybe won't fight at heavyweight. And I tweeted out, I said, hey, I don't understand the UFC's matchmaking here. And Jason Hagholm, I love my guy. He tweets back to me, though. Says, hey, no, this is the plan. This is what they're going to do. But at the time, I didn't understand why certain MMA media, certain guys were saying, hey, this is the plan, this is what's going to happen. And everyone was acting like, hey, we're just going to go, everyone's going to be happy. No matter what happens here, Jon Jones is just going to fight at heavyweight. I mean, you could see this coming. Jon Jones was not going to fight at heavyweight if Francis Ngannou won. And sure enough, what happens? He wins. He wins the title, and Jon Jones doesn't want to fight Francis Ngannou. Now, I will say this. I don't think he wants to fight him for a certain amount of money. So I do think Jon Jones is telling the truth there. But again, that's something you could see happening. You don't think Jon Jones is going to want to fight Francis Ngannou for almost nothing, right? No, he wouldn't. He wants to fight him for a good amount of money if he's going to do it. This is a dangerous fight. This might be the most dangerous fight, if he ever does it, of Jon Jones' career. So you could see this coming from a mile away a little bit. And that's because of the UFC. They botched the situation. They shouldn't have matched Ngannou with Miocic. They should have waited on that. It should have been Miocic versus Jon Jones. That should have been the fight they went to. And if they weren't willing to make that right away, then they should have maybe just told Jon Jones, stay in the light heavyweight division. We have some other plans for you there. Because otherwise, this was a waste of time. This was a smokescreen by the UFC, if you will, to try to get some excitement. But in the end, nothing happens with it. I will say this, though, again, on the back end of this. I said Jon Jones wants the money. Part of this is Jon Jones' fault. It is, a lot of it is, obviously. And I hear a lot of media guys out there, a lot of guys I respect again saying, this is the UFC, this goes back to problem number one, where they're not paying fighters enough. I disagree with that here. I do think fighters should get paid more. I think if Jon Jones were to go to Dana White, though, I think if you were to call him today and say, hey, you know what, I want to go to breakfast tomorrow, which, he's tweeting out sometimes here and there, hey, I don't know, some of these are jokes or he's playing games. He says he's talking to him or when he works out a deal, so maybe it'll get done still. But if I'm Jon Jones, you go to breakfast with Dana White. You go to breakfast, you go to lunch, whatever it is. I used to be in radio, sales guys, you know how they work. Go to lunch, go to a nice steakhouse, something like that. Head out to Vegas, New Mexico, Vegas. It's a short drive, short flight. Go out there, Jon Jones. Go to lunch or dinner or breakfast, whatever, with Dana White and the higher-ups at the UFC. And just say you want to get a deal done. And I guarantee Jon Jones will get paid. I guarantee he'll get paid something. Now, again, is it going to be what he wants? Probably not. But that's anything, though. I mean, we're looking at, we got Major League Baseball on right now. We got a ton of sports on. That's every sport. A lot of guys are going to try to work out a deal. It doesn't always work out the way you want them to. But you have to accept then, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to go, play for this other team or what? So Jon Jones is going to have to decide that. But I guarantee if he goes to meet with those guys, tries to work something out, I guarantee he's going to get a very good lump sum of something. Okay, again, maybe it's not what he wants, but I think he'll work something out. Again, both these sides, they feel far apart. They could, sometime get back together on the same page, and it could still happen. But this is just this this problem just to me boils down to matchmaking by the UFC. They handled this situation wrong. They should have given Jon Jones a fight sooner. They should have put things on hold a little bit more. And then on the other end, again, I think Jon Jones is to blame for it a little bit. I understand wanting to get paid, but I think he could get paid a little bit more and could still get paid if he goes to the table and talks to those UFC guys. It'll be a very interesting situation, though, right? To see what happens with Jon Jones in Francis Ngannou here, which will be a super fight. And my next topic here, getting into the next one, will be about the heavyweight division. So let's get into that now. The actual matchmaking of it here. If Jon Jones, well, we'll include him in this situation. Let me restart the clock here. 5 minutes. Here's the thing. I mean, if the Jon Jones fight gets made, of course, that's a super fight. But right now, let's just put that on the back burner just a little bit. We'll keep it we'll keep it in view, but we'll put it on the back burner just a little bit here between these two of a possible Francis Ngannou and Jon Jones fight. We'll put them on. I actually have a list of guys here that I wrote down, the contenders, right, if you will, in the heavyweight division, and I put Jon Jones on the right. Okay, so Jones is there, but we'll just throw him out of this conversation just for now, okay? Because there's some other news the other day, and this was the other big part of it, and why this Jon Jones situation is getting even more interesting. That the UFC, according to Errol Helwani, he tweeted this out, and some other MMA media guys did as well, that the UFC was looking to make Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou. Of course, they've already fought once, but this time would be for the title. Francis Ngannou, for now, has turned this fight down because of the timing. That's understandable. They could still remake it, though, from what everybody's saying. In late, June, July, Ngannou versus Derek Lewis could still happen, which would be a very interesting fight on paper. The first fight wasn't very interesting, and that's why it would be... I still think you could garner a lot of interest for that, but I think it would definitely be different, though, for the UFC to try to promote that compared to some of these other fights, as there's some fans that have that image in the back of their head of Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou standing around, not throwing, not really doing much for 15 minutes, right? So I do think that would be a fight that would be hard for the UFC to sell. But that's one possibility for the UFC to match Francis Ngannou with in his first title defense is Derek Lewis, which, again, it could very well happen. The other guys, you could just throwing out there, guys who you would see fighting Francis Ngannou next for the heavyweight title. Stipe Miocic, of course, because he just was the champion. I don't think, again, I'm just throwing everybody out there that would be a possibility. Stipe, maybe he gets his rematch. I don't think that's going to happen right away. But Stipe's one. We already mentioned Derek Lewis. Curtis Blades, one of them. They've already fought twice. This will be a third one. But Curtis Blades also has suffered, of course, a knockout loss recently. But you can throw Curtis Blades up there just because he's ranked. I don't think it'll be him either, but you can throw him up there. And then you got Cyril Gane and you got Alexander Volkov, too. The other two that would probably be possibilities here. Again, Jon Jones in that. If Jon Jones works out a deal tomorrow, it's Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou. But let's say it doesn't get done. Looking at the other 5 guys here that you would see besides Jon Jones facing Ngannou for the title, I think only 2 of them really make sense right now. And that's Cyril Gane and Volkov. And from what we're seeing is both those guys are supposed to fight each other over the summer here in June, which, again, could be interesting timing for Francis Ngannou to defend his title for the first time. The UFC wants to get him back in there, fight for a title, defend his title for the first time again, plus it's a heavyweight fight, right? So the UFC probably would prefer at this point to still work out that Derek Lewis fight, have Cyril Gane fight Volkov. Whoever wins the Volkov-Gane fight then faces the winner of Ngannou-Lewis. That's probably what the UFC is going to do here if Jon Jones can't figure something out. But I think that's the only possibility for the UFC right now. And I say only possibility, again, maybe if things got really bad, maybe the UFC would say, you know what, Curtis Blades, we'll throw you a fight real quick. If you win it, maybe we'll give you a shot. Or again, Stipe, maybe, hey, if you're okay enough, which I think he's got a 2-month medical suspension, I believe, hey, you know what, we'll pay you enough to go fight. Maybe, but again, I think it comes down to either Cyril Gane or Alexander Volkov. If Jon Jones can't fight, if Jon Jones doesn't face Francis Ngannou, facing him at some point in the Derek Lewis scenario, which I think it's really starting to trend that way, that the UFC probably tries to work out that Derek Lewis fight later on in the summer, and then Cyril Gane versus Volkov, whoever wins that, gets to face Francis Ngannou. But again, there's a lot of months till then. I mean, that's the end of June, I believe. June 26th, that fight is supposed to happen. So, there's a lot of time between here and there. If one of those guys were to get injured, let's say Derek Lewis, let's say Ngannou kept saying, you know what, I don't want that, or Derek Lewis said he didn't want that, which I don't know why he would, but let's say he didn't. maybe if a Volkov got injured or sick, or a Gon got sick, or, COVID, obviously, hopefully nothing serious, but if they got with COVID, came down with COVID, something like that, an injury, maybe one of those guys would get inserted in. But I think that's the only real possibility for the UFC right now. The division's a little bit of a mess because of Jon Jones. I think everything's on hold because of that Jon Jones situation, as I talked about in topic 1 there. And that'll really dictate what happens in this UFC heavyweight division. And just want to see it get resolved because Francis Ngannou, I'm so happy for him to win the title. So happy. And I'm coming up on my 5 minutes here, so I'll stop the clock. But just so happy for Francis Ngannou to get that heavyweight title over Stipe Miocic. And while I was away, I think that was one of the most impactful things in mixed martial arts that I saw. One of the things that I was most excited about was Ngannou winning the title. Just, everything he's battled in his life, all the adversity he's battled, to come back, be able to, the first Miocic fight, he loses on unanimous decision, comes back, has to battle his way back, then able to get that next title shot and then wins the title by knockout too, which is, you didn't have to take him to decision. He wins by knockout, which he's done to everybody pretty much. Pretty amazing there, and very excited for Francis Ngannou, and excited for him to get back in there. Again, a little bit of a bummer that so far we have not seen the UFC be able to work out some sort of deal for Ngannou to stop it. But if I had to put my money on it real quick before I get to my topic number 3 here, my next topic, I'd probably say again, Derek Lewis late summer, Cyril Gane, Volkov. Whoever wins that then faces him. But we'll see. Jon Jones is the wild card there. All right, let's get to topic number 3 now. Recapping a little bit of one championship last night. Let me start my clock here again. But one championship last night, one on TNT 1. It was, I don't want to say the biggest event in one championship history because that's a little dramatic, right? That's a little reactionary. But this was a big moment for one championship. A lot of casual fans, of course, don't know what one championship is. If you're a diehard, you know one championship. If you live in the other parts of the world, of course, a lot of parts of Asia, you know what one championship is. But here in the United States, people are still trying to, get on board with what one championship is. So last night was a pretty decent moment for them as they had a card in prime time on TNT. Is it an NBC, ABC, ESPN, that type of thing? No, but it's still on TNT. The NBA's on TNT at night. So this was a big moment for one championship. You have a card in the United States on in prime time. This was their chance to break through a little bit the United States market, and that's what they're trying to do. If you ask my wife, she watches a little bit of mixed martial arts with me. She mostly watches UFC. She'll watch a little Bellator, but, my wife's obviously a casual fan. My buddy, I have a good buddy who's really good, especially lately, he's gotten really into mixed martial arts. Of course, myself, I've been into it for a while, but I've tried to, welcome him in, right? He's trying to get more into mixed martial arts. He's watched the UFC over the years. He's starting to get into some of the other promotions, though. But, I had to explain to my buddy what one championship is, right? So they're trying to break through to those type of people. And last night was one of those moments where they had some shots to do that. And I'll get to some just brief recaps of the fights real quick. A couple big ones, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, Eddie Alvarez, a couple of the more notable guys on that card, a couple of former guys who used to fight in the UFC, of course, especially Mighty Mouse, one of the greatest flyweights, maybe the greatest flyweight of all time, of course, before the Ben Askren trade, which I'll have some thoughts on that in a second, too, here. Some of those recaps. But just on the surface, this card last night, kind of a missed moment for one championship. The pacing of the card was very good. They need to keep doing that. That will keep a lot of fans. It's something I hate about the UFC. I understand ESPN, broadcast times, all that stuff. I used to work in radio again, so I'm very aware of all that stuff, that you got to keep to a deadline, the schedule, you're trying to pace, there's commercials. You don't want fights to happen too soon, which, especially the main event, that type of thing. Bellator does some of that too, although it'll be interesting now they're on Showtime to see how they pace things out. But you saw one championship last night just rolling fights out, rolling them out. And I don't hate that. That's pretty good. I like that pacing there. But they got the start time a little wrong in the broadcasts. The broadcast didn't seem to really flow that well. One fight, it was just kind of really fast, which I like again. But sometimes you got to slow it down a little bit to get that start time right? I mean, you have a lot of people doing other things. Maybe you're only going to tune in at a certain time, that type of thing. So they missed the ball a little bit there, but I'm not going to be too harsh on them. They still have some more events coming up, of course, on TNT. I think they're going to get it down better here, have that good pacing, and get their start times right there. So that was just the one thing I noticed. But as far as the card itself, it was an all right card, of course. Some weird things happening. The Eddie Alvarez fight against Lupacius. Eddie Alvarez in that fight, of course, he gets disqualified. He was looking good against Lupakis. He was looking really good. He took him down to the ground, of course, got him up against the cage, was landing some punches, but the referee decides that, it doesn't decide. He warns him mid-fight, too, as well, mid-exchange on the ground, that Eddie Alvarez is hitting behind the ear, he feels, hitting behind the head, illegal shots. He warns him a little bit. Eddie Alvarez keeps punching him. He then, as Eddie Alvarez is pretty much winning the fight by knockout, then says, hey, Eddie Alvarez is disqualified again. Go look it up on Twitter. Go check the fight out. You see what I mean. So that was weird thing number one. And to be honest with you, you watch the fight. A lot of people agree with me. And a lot of you out there feel the same way too. Eddie Alvarez shouldn't have been disqualified. It was a bad moment from that referee. I get fighter safety. I get that type of thing. Were some of the shots landing behind the ear a little bit? Yes. But at the same time, if I'm turning my head purposely while a guy's punching me, of course a guy is going to get hit in the back of the head a little bit. Again, shouldn't be allowed, but at some point the onus should be on the other fighter as well. You can't just be doing that the whole time. So Eddie Alvarez, I don't think he should be disqualified. That was a weird moment though. But the biggest moment of all on the card was the Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson fight against Adriano Moraes. Moraes wins by knockout in the second round. First man ever to stop Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson by strikes. A very, very fun moment for Moraes. And he's a big flyweight, isn't he? I mean, he is massive. And it showed in that fight. He ends up beating Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. A massive moment for one championship. I'm sure they hated that moment a little bit, though, because they wanted Mighty Mouse. I mean, they wanted Mighty Mouse to win that fight. I mean, he's such a big acquisition for them. He came over in the Ben Askren trade, of course. And since then, he's been pretty good, of course, winning the fights he's been in. But now he loses, doesn't get the title here. A big moment for one championship. A fun fight and good for Moraes, And I know I've run out of time here, so I'll just sum this up real quick. But a big moment for Moraes there, as he's able to get that win. A bad moment for one championship, though, as they don't have Mighty Mouse win it. And this trade now, hindsight, looking back on it, Ben Askren and Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, and I joked around about it last night sarcastically on Twitter. I said maybe the UFC got the better end of this deal with Demetrius Johnson because of how he lost last night. Of course, I'm joking because Ben Askren turned into be almost nothing in the UFC. But to be honest with you, this trade, it's still a big trade, but you look back on it now, and one championship got the better end of it still because Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, he brought some viewership to there. He brought some pedigree, some real, again, if you live in the United States, if you hadn't watched one championship, it brings some real credence to that brand that, hey, I've seen Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson fight. Now he's in one championship. So one still got the better end of it, but you have to look back on that deal now and say, Ben Askren didn't do anything. Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, he was all right so far, right? He's won some fights. He didn't win the title. I mean, the trade hindsight now, I don't think it worked out better for one, but I don't think it worked out like either side really wanted it to. I think if you would ask both sides, maybe one, again, would be very happy with their end of the deal there. But, I think they probably want more out of the deal of what they got. But an interesting card last night. Again, there's another card, I believe, coming up next week. One championship, yes. We'll see how they handle that one. But an interesting one last night with some interesting moments in it. I could go another 5 minutes on this again. I got to get to my next topic here in a second. But maybe I'll just cut into that one a little bit. I'm already breaking my rules. See, I already told you. But the Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson in that main event, Moraes hits him with a knee. And he was a downed opponent, of course, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson is. And that's a big deal because we've seen in recent months, I haven't even got into this yet, the Aljamain Sterling Peter Yan fight. Yan hits him with the knee. He's down. He's grounded, of course, disqualified. Belt goes to Sterling. Well, Moraes last night, he hits a grounded fighter as well, similar to what Jan did, but he wins the fight because it's legal in one championship. It's a big debate right now. It's one I'll save for another show, actually, another day. Personally, though, just real quick, getting off my chest, I do think knees to a downed opponent should be allowed. Certain circumstances. I don't think to every downed opponent, but I just think that it should be allowed. I think they should find some ways, some rules around that to make that work because I don't think it makes any sense to not have that rule in mixed martial arts. I knew it could lead to some brutal moments, but again, real quick, I think it should be allowed. I'll save that. I'll save a full topic for another day. Maybe I'll bring you on when I start doing the live shows, the fan interaction there. All right, let's go to topic number 4 here real quick. And this is one that I saw on Twitter actually yesterday. And maybe not one many or necessarily everybody's talking about, but Scott Coker, of course, the president of Bellator. It was Patricio Pitbull who had just got a great win over the weekend on Bellator 255. Ends up getting a big win over Emmanuel Sanchez, gets a knockout win. And a lot of people, including myself, believe, hey, Patricio Pitbull, if he had a chance against the best in the UFC, he could hold his own very well. But again, that's controversial because a lot of fans out there, they'll look at it, say, hey, well, that's Bellator. They're not UFC caliber. And you can say similar things about the other promotions, one championship, PFL, even though PFL's grabbed some fighters from the UFC this offseason here and former ones in Rory McDonald. But you've seen some of that from fans. So it's always talked about, and that's what Patricio Pitbull, he's on the Ariel Helwani show, the podcast, he's talking about that. Hey, I'd love a chance to prove against some of these UFC guys that I'm better than them. Well, Scott Coker, president of Bellator, he tweets out, hey, basically, I'm open. If the UFC wants to work a cross-promotional deal out, I will do it with them. I'll do it. And I think this is such an interesting concept. Will it ever happen? Let's just start out there. Will it actually ever happen? Probably not. And there's a couple reasons I'll get into a second for that. But will it ever happen? No, probably not. But I think it's a fun thing to talk about, though. Wouldn't it be awesome to see a Bellator versus UFC card, right? A 1-versus-1 card. And we saw a little bit last year with Bellator or the year before COVID, we had Risen, right? You had the Risen promotion fighting some of the Bellator guys. I love this idea. And I would love to even go even crazier than that. I would love a Bellator, PFL, UFC, I would love to see all of that. One championship, I would love to get a whole night of everybody. Work it out, find a way. It'd be hard, but again, probably never going to happen. I think it'd be a lot of fun though. And especially a Bellator versus UFC card. And here in the United States, UFC is going to be king. But Bellator, they've made some grounds. They made some steps here to get better talent. I think it'd be very interesting to see a Bellator versus UFC card. So for Scott Coker to tweet this out, good for him. And maybe Scott Coker's a little full of hot air here because, maybe Dana White and them would come to him and say, hey, you know what? We'll do it, but we only want to pay our fighters. We think we should get paid more than you. And maybe Scott Coker would tell him to, shove it somewhere else, right? Shove him where the sun doesn't shine. So, maybe Scott Coker's, maybe he's giving a little bit of, maybe he's getting into something that he wouldn't want to open the can of worms on either, but I think it's interesting, and for him to tweet about, good for him. I would love to see that. That would be an amazing move for the sport of mixed martial arts. And again, for guys like Patricio Pitbull, I'd love to see him get a shot against some UFC guys. And Michael Chandler, we've seen that now. He went from Bellator. He's immediately went into the UFC. He's getting a title shot now in UFC 262 after one fight. He goes in there. He starches Dan Hooker. Now he gets Charles Oliveira for the lightweight title. It's an interesting concept. I would love to see it. Again, though, will it ever happen? No. And the biggest reason why it will never happen is because these promotions don't want to look bad. Let's be honest with it. Dana White especially, although he trusts his fighters, and at one point in time when the UFC was growing, obviously, Dana White took Chuck Liddell overseas to pride fighting. And Chuck Liddell had some success, but he didn't have a lot of success either. It was a great move for the UFC at the time. They're trying to get PR, and that's why Bellator would have more to gain from a UFC cross promotional event than the UFC would. The UFC's king on the they're the king on the block. They're the guy you don't want to mess with. They're the ones that have the most PR. They are the NFL, right? If there's the CFL and all these other leagues, the XFL when it's been around, they're the NFL. Would the NFL ever want to have games with the XFL? No. But would the XFL want to have games with the NFL? Yes, they would. And that's Bellator. They'd want to do it. But for the UFC, you have nothing to gain from that, essentially. You give credence to Bellator if, in fact, let's say Patricio Pitbull goes out there and he starts starching UFC fighters or any of the divisions, honestly, because there's some, look at the light heavyweight division. Vadim Nemkov. I think he's one of the best, if not the best, light heavyweight in the world right now. Any mixed martial arts promotion for Bellator. He'd go out there, maybe he starts beating up on UFC light heavyweights. So the Bellator would have more to gain from that than the UFC. So will it ever happen? No, it'll never happen. And that's the reason why, is because the UFC also, money's a big part of it too. But along with money, it's none of these promotions want to, I say none again, more so the UFC, they don't want to lose anything. They have more to lose from that than anything. They'd rather just keep their promotion right, keep under their letters, and then keep moving along down the road of cards and just act like Bellator's not even existent and then have Dana White say some again, some funny things in a press conference and rip Scott Coker and the other guys, and then sign free agents when he can, like Michael Chandler. That's probably what would keep going down the list there. All right, topic number 5, my last one here, and then I'll get into some parting shots briefly. Oh, and I do have my movie review. I said I'm going to add a 6th one in a second here that I'll get into a second. But topic number 5 here, speaking of Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler being asked this week, doing some media rounds, starting to do some media rounds for that upcoming UFC 262 lightweight title fight against Charles Oliveira. Michael Chandler saying that there should be a McGregor belt. Okay, so Conor McGregor, of course, he's going to fight Dustin Poirier coming up July 10th. Up in July again, the rematch there. The third one, not a rematch. It's the third fight of the trilogy here. They're going to complete. Of course, McGregor won the first one. Poirier won the second one. But they're going to fight there. So, a lot of guys still trying to get at Conor McGregor. A lot of guys still trying to fight Conor McGregor, of course, because he's going to earn. I talked about topic number 1, Jon Jones. Honestly, if Jon Jones is fighting Conor McGregor, he'd probably get paid pretty good, probably. That's just the reality. You fight Conor McGregor, McGregor's definitely going to get paid. You might not as much, but you're still going to get a very good lump sum, and you're still going to be very popular. Dustin Poirier's popularity now way higher than it was. He's on a freaking commercial, right? He wins, and then he's on the Quicken Loans commercial or whatever during the Super Bowl. All of a sudden, he's on there for his upset victory. A lot of guys want to fight Conor McGregor, including Michael Chandler, who's just now coming to the UFC, feels good, getting more of that spotlight. Again, king of the block the UFC is. I just moved there. I'd want to fight. I'm going to get a title fight. I still want Conor McGregor, though, Michael Chandler's basically saying. So he was saying that they should have a McGregor belt. For whoever faces McGregor, you get the McGregor belt if you win. I'll start the clock here. And this is just such an interesting... And the reason why I wanted to bring this up, and this is one of those things that a lot of fans out there, you might look at it, and a lot of people may have just brushed over it. Like, that's funny. That's interesting. Oh, that's a good idea, or that's a bad idea. A lot of people might have done that. But when I look at this and say, this is more of a topic to me and more of an issue for things to talk about throughout mixed martial arts, more than anything. And that's because of other, we'll say, fake titles we've seen in recent years. Because you have Michael Chandler, who's honestly saying, hey, we need a McGregor belt. Well, we have the BMF belt now, of course, right? The bad mother, you-know-what. Between Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal still has the BMF belt. That belt was created for that fight. You have that belt. Now you have someone saying, hey, we should get a McGregor belt. And you also have, and I think it also feeds into what we're seeing now with Masvidal over the years, and actually this Dustin Poirier-Conor McGregor fight, that essentially Dustin Poirier turned down a title fight right away. He's essentially saying, hey, I'd rather go get the money here. Send me to the trilogy fight. I don't care about the title. And I think that's the larger topic here with the McGregor belt, leading into the BMF belt, and some of these guys saying, honestly now, I don't really care to fight for the title. I think it's an issue in mixed martial arts that has to be watched very closely here, because I think belts are starting to be diminished a little bit. And I say a little bit because, again, Francis Ngannou, I'm so happy for him. Heavyweight champion. Always, whenever you get that strap in mixed martial arts, it'll mean something. It will mean something, and it still does. But you got to be careful, though, because what you're getting now is, especially in going back to the money issue, I do think fighters should be paid more. You have a lot of fighters now who are saying, if the money fight is not a title fight, then that is okay with me. You know what? Give me money fight every day of the week, non-title fight. That starts to diminish the meaning of belts a little bit, because you don't have the best fighting for the best. Dustin Poirier, after his Conor McGregor win, I'm not saying he should have hands down been in that, but he should have probably been close to hands down in that fight against Charles Oliveira. I love Michael Chandler. He has one fight in the UFC, though. Chandler honestly should be fighting Conor McGregor next, or Chandler should be fighting somebody else and then maybe vying for that title shot. I love that he's getting it, but Poirier should be facing Charles Oliveira. It shows, again, Poirier is more interested in that McGregor fight right now. Now, the timing's right for him for sure. If he turns the fight down and McGregor fights Nate Diaz, or he fights somebody else, loses, maybe Conor walks away, maybe the value of that fight with Poirier means less. So I get why Poirier is doing it. But it just shows you that some of these guys, including Chandler here, who I actually do think Chandler, when he says this, I think he's saying it more of like, hey, I'd like to be the lightweight champion and get a McGregor belt. He still wants titles. He's one of those guys. But it also shows that some guys, there's these fake, quote-unquote fake titles being made here. The BMF belt's not a real thing. Jorge Masvidal beat Nate Diaz for it. And they putting that on the line again? The Kamaru Usman fight against Jorge Masvidal, the first fight. They didn't put that up for line. It wasn't, hey, here's the, welterweight belt and the BMF belt on the line. No, it was just one belt. So I think it's interesting, and I think it's something to watch for fans and for the higher ups of the UFC, that you got to be careful. And again, maybe this is just some passing, jargon here by Michael Chandler, and it'll never get, really come to fruition. I don't think Dana White's in love with the idea either. Obviously, I don't think he's going to make it, but it's something to watch out for moving forward here, that hopefully we don't get too many fake titles being made. And you got to be careful not to allow these belts to get diminished like that. You have to make sure guys are, and that's why I still think guys should get rewarded for those title fights. Make it to where you get paid more for a title fight. I think that's the way it should be every time, right? And I think that's what it should, and I do know they do get paid for title fights a little bit more than the other fights, but I think it should be that way to make it even more lucrative for guys. Make these title fights mean a lot more. And because, honestly, boxing, that's one of the big issues boxing has, is that there's so many belts that none of them mean really anything anymore. I mean, Canelo Alvarez, the fact that he is not the champ in the fact that he doesn't have every single middleweight belt is ridiculous. Canelo is the best pound for pound fighter in the world. He has been for a number of years now. The fact that he doesn't have that is ridiculous. You got to make sure mixed martial arts that doesn't happen here either, that a lot of these belts aren't getting pushed down too much. You got to make sure they mean something still. And then part of that is, when I saw this story, that's the first thing I thought is, oh great, here comes another idea that someone's going to leech onto maybe, and we're going to get another fake belt, and all of a sudden, the actual titles themselves, the lightweight title won't, lightweight title or any other divisions won't mean as much. Hopefully not though, but it's something to watch out for them. All right, I know I'm a little short there, but I went over on some of the other ones, so I'm going to stop the clock. That's my 5-minute topics there. That was fun. I'm going to do that every single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Only not Thursdays, as I'll do my preview show later in the week, but I'll do those recapping everything to start the week there. But that was fun way to start the show there. All right, a few topics just to get to real quick. Oh, I keep almost forgetting my sixth one I'll add just for today here. A little bit of fight review, movie review, right? You had, and again, this is one that was promoted throughout America, United States, right? A lot, some of the other parts of the world too. You saw this movie trailer everywhere, right? The fight that was promised, the fight of the summer, if you will, right? The fight of the spring, I guess, technically. But the fight of the summer, the fight of the spring. Godzilla versus King Kong. Godzilla versus Kong, the movie, right? Now, and I'll rate the fight here in a second, okay? And I'm not going to, spoilers, I know some of you haven't seen it. I'm not going to ruin it too much for you, although I'll just recommend don't go see it. But I won't ruin anything for anybody here. But the fight sequence-wise for Godzilla versus King Kong, it was, and again, I saw these movies while I was away too, so that's why I wanted to bring it to you too, and it's been on my mind a lot. I've been telling everybody about this. The fight scenes themselves were pretty cool. Now, if you like CGI though, CGI wise, it's cool. It's pretty cool. You get some, you can see in the trailer, so I'm not spoiling anything, but there's like a fight scene out in the middle of the ocean on some aircraft carriers. Yeah, look kind of cool, right? CGI is kind of cool. So the fight scenes themselves, all right. Yeah, it was all right. The movie itself, though, was absolutely awful. Again, do yourself a favor. Don't go see this. I hated this movie. And I hate to be this guy. I'm normally not this guy. I hate the guy that goes and sees Star Wars or, Mission Impossible or James Bond, 007 or something like that, and says, I hated it. I hate that guy because it's an action movie, right? You know what you're getting. I'm not going to see Inception. I'm not going to see some earth-shattering movie that's going to win a ton of awards. Unless it's a CGI award, it's a movie with action, right? So I don't like those guys, but I'm going to be that guy for this. I hated this movie. About 40 minutes into an hour movie into it, and I guess you can see it on HBO Max, so do that. Go watch it at home. Don't go to the movies and waste your time on this one. Even though I'd tell you to go support the movie industry because they've been hurting, obviously, because of support businesses in general because of everything with COVID. But just watch this one at home, though. Or don't see it. I would recommend mostly just don't see it. I hated this movie. The plot was terrible. And again, I'm not looking for plot in these movies, but it was so bad that it almost seemed like they didn't try or that they were rushing through it. I hated it. I hated the movie. Don't go see Godzilla vs. King Kong. If you're going to watch a movie, it's a little bit long. It's 4 hours worth. But go check out the Snyder Cut, the Justice League Snyder Cut. That was a great movie. I loved. The first Justice League, I didn't like it very much. I didn't say I didn't like it. I liked it. It was all right, But this Snyder Cut is so different. It's so different. I love the Snyder Cut, Justice League. It was amazing. 4 hours long. There was only one thing, and again, I'm not going to spoil it. I'd get too specific if I told you about it. There was only one thing about the movie I didn't like, but everything else about Snyder Cut Justice League was amazing. So don't waste your time. Spend 4 hours watching the Snyder Cut of the Justice League. Don't go spend 2 hours, whatever the heck it is, of Godzilla versus Kong. Terrible. Watch the Justice League fight instead, which was a much better movie in my opinion, the Snyder Cut. So that's my brief movie review here. Maybe I'll do it every week, probably won't, but that's my movie review today. For Godzilla versus King Kong, and I guess Snyder Cut in the Justice League. All right, let's get out of here real quick. 3 topics on the way out, 3 parting shots for you real quick. Number 1, we have a new clothing deal, new apparel deal kicking in here. As Venum, of course, taking over the UFC contract. Reebok, they had their last event last week. We're going to get our first, UFC on ABC2 coming up Saturday. We have our first actual fight card with Venum. Although Reebok does have rights to the shoes of the fighters. They still have that, but it'll be Venum now, of course, that has the apparel that's kicked in now. To be honest with you, seeing the photos of all this Venum gear, I don't like it. I think they missed the mark a little bit, the UFC did here. The design-wise, it's early on. Again, I talked about one championship. I'm not going to go too hard on them. Same thing here a little bit. I mean, this Venum deal, obviously, it's not going to end 6 months from now. They're going to have some time to twerk some things, be able to do some of that thing, tweak some things. I mean, sorry, I'm not twerking anything, but tweak some things here. They're going to have some time to tweak those, change some of the designs on this clothes. I hope they do. It doesn't look, the fighter uniforms don't look bad. They just look similar to the Reebok ones. If you're going to rebrand, then rebrand it. Don't, you see the NFL and some of these other, jersey makers, throughout sports, Nike, Adidas, anybody. If you're going to rebrand something, do something different. Don't make it look similar. That's what it looks too similar to me. They got time to switch it up, though. And I actually, if you go over the UFC.com, the shop they have over there, I actually like some of the stuff they have, just the non-fighter uniforms. I actually like some of those designs better Venum has right now, just normal apparel, than some of the fighter uniforms. So maybe they'll do some of that moving forward. But the new Venum deal kicking in, I want them to tweak. I would have liked them to tweak the uniforms just a little bit there to make them a little bit different. But still, the Venum deal kicking in. And also, last little part of that, not only is the design the same, but the payout structure is almost similar to Reebok. So it's not, tomato, right? I mean, they could have had Reebok on their logos, on their uniforms, as far as I'm concerned, Saturday, and it wouldn't have mattered. The payout's the same. The uniforms look the same. Mismark here by the UFC and Venum. Hopefully Venum fixes that a little bit and gets some new designs moving forward in that one. Topic number 2 here, my other parting shot. Then I'll have one more on the way out. But my parting shot number 2 here, Maycee Barber. She's been match made. She's going to fight, I believe it's later this summer. Let me see here. Yeah, later this summer. She is now going to fight Miranda Maverick. So 2 prospects going against each other. And why this is a very interesting point here is because this is essentially, and again, Maycee Barber can still figure things out. The UFC is not bailing on her. This feels like the UFC, though, is moving on a little bit from Maycee Barber. Both these women prospects at one point. But you can clearly see now, the UFC has Miranda Maverick here, right? And if you're listening to the audio version, I have my right hand out. I know how it is listening to radio or audio. I'm not going to put you through that torture there. But I have my right hand out. They have Miranda Maverick in the right hand, and then they have Maycee Barber in the left hand, and they have the right hand higher here. They have Miranda Maverick way higher right now, obviously. They're stock-wise, everything, than Maycee Barber. And that's clear now. And a lot of that's because of the last year or so that Maycee Barber has had. I mean, she loses to Roxanne Modafferi. Modafferi's a veteran, though, but she loses to her. She comes back. Her last fight out, she loses again. I still think it's unfair a little bit. I think you have to give Maycee Barber some time to figure things out. But clearly, the UFC, Miranda Maverick's above her. They think she's above her. That she's going to be the better fighter, and they're rolling with her. Otherwise, they wouldn't make this fight. There's a reason why you look at the heavyweight division. UFC heavyweight division. There's a reason why Cyril Gane's fighting Junior Dos Santos. There's a reason why some of these young guys are fighting older fighters. They don't want to make those matchups yet. Those matchups are better served down the road for them. So for them to make that matchup right away, Miranda Maverick, Maycee Barber, it shows you that they're speeding this process along of this fight, that they don't think Maycee Barber is going to be around very long. Now, maybe they're wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Maycee Barber wins. Maybe Miranda Maverick's around shorter. I tend to agree with them mostly, though, that I do think Miranda Maverick's going to be the one around a little bit longer than Maycee Barber. So that's an interesting matchup there, parting shot number 2, and showing that I think the UFC is moving on a little bit from Maycee Barber. And then parting shot number 3, just to end here, kind of a general one here, but COVID a year later, right? We're over a year now of when sports were canceled. There was no fights. I mean, April last year was terrible. It was awful. And I'll end the show on this one again just because of I don't think it's only suiting that we talk about and just kind of reflect that, you know what, we had a crazy past year here. Last April, we didn't have any sports. We didn't have any fights. A year later, we do. We have Francis Ngannou as the heavyweight champion now. We have some phenomenal fights coming up. And not only do we have fights coming up, and I feel like this is why everything's just coming full circle now. You know, and if you got your vaccine out there, I'm going to get mine actually tomorrow on Friday. But, you know, if you got your vaccine yet, great. A lot of people have, or at least, you know, things are starting to return to normal no matter what your, you know, thoughts on anything are. Everything's returning to normal, sort of. And we're getting crowds back in arenas now. I'm watching baseball this week. You got fans back at ballparks. I know overseas in Europe, they're going to have some fans there in sports. UFC, they're going to have a full crowd. Coming up, UFC 261, Masvidal versus Usman 2. Also, UFC 262 down in Houston, Texas. Chandler versus Oliveira is going to have a full crowd. Things just seem to be coming full circle, and I just like to reflect on things and look at it and say, you know what a year it's been. Because this time last year, everything sucked, right? Everything was terrible. We didn't have any sports. We didn't have any movies. We didn't have really anything. I couldn't talk about Godzilla versus Kong. All I could talk about was what new Netflix movie was coming out or show, right? So it's good to reflect on and say, you know what a year it's been. We're finally coming full circle. It feels good, and I'm glad to be back here on the Man in the Cage, MMA and Combat Sports Podcast, talking to everybody. I hope you enjoyed the new format today. It'll be even smoother moving forward. I'll tweak some things here and there, but thanks for tuning in. I loved it. Again, go check out the video version. The audio version will still be posted over on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, but go check it out over on YouTube, the Man in the Cage, MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. Excited to bring this to everybody weekly. I'll be back again, video tomorrow as well. Every single episode, I'm going to be back tomorrow, talk about everything, preview everything. Again, another Bellator card coming up Friday night, tomorrow night, and UFC on ABC2 coming up on Saturday. Marvin Vettori now taking on Kevin Holland. A good card there. Going to talk about all of that. We're going to keep rolling. We're going to keep momentum here. Tweet at me at Jeff_Brantley. Let me know your thoughts on everything. Send your questions to me, and I'll talk to everybody, as I said, coming up tomorrow. Until then, though, I'll talk to everybody later. Take care, everybody.